Number 3, families are most successful when treatment matches their developmental stage and when it's culturally important. Now, it's easy to think of families as just families, but if you think of almost families as having a life cycle, a little bit like people have a life cycle, when you're young, different parenting activities are probably more important than when you're an adolescent, and different activities are then probably important when you're a young adult. Different stages in the family's development of people coming and going, having children, having those children grow up, having extended families, divorced families, etc. All of those different stages are going to have an impact on the relational context in which we're working. So we have to be able to match our treatment to that developmental stage in a systematic way. Each are modified to adjust and to fit family development status and culture. When you have a family with a young child, you're interested in daily living risks, stress, couple stress, safety risks. This is a common referral in the child welfare system. And if you're going to help parents and caregivers work with their children, a more parent education and safety-based focus is important. When families have adolescents, it's a different ballgame because adolescents have a voice. They're developmentally at a point where they're supposed to argue, they're supposed to debate, they're supposed to try to learn and understand what they believe and what's important to them. So parenting and helping a family in which there are adolescents means helping parents and caretakers learn to parent with alliance and to monitor and supervise for success rather than just for contingencies. This is a common juvenile justice and behavioral health referral, and alliance-based working things out becomes our primary focus. Those families with young adults and those adults with families of choice are no less part of a family system, but an adult-focused FFT is a common behavioral health referral. And again, the idea is to build alliance with the family relational system, be it biological or be it by choice, around that young adult to help pull on its ability to support and help the adult maintain and develop positive behaviors. Culture is an incredibly important feature in almost everything, and culture, as we're going to talk about it today, extends from culture to race to ethnicity. And cultural factors in that broad umbrella, understandably broad, changes and helps value in different ways how families are organized or put together, who's in charge, the developmental and very specific things that happen at these different stages of family development, emotional and psychological distance and closeness, conflict styles and parenting styles, part of culture, part of community, part of ethnicity, part of race. Adapting to these differences means taking the scientific change mechanisms and not coming up with new mechanisms, but adjusting how those get delivered within that cultural style. And our approach to culture, ethnicity, as race is to take our lead from the family and to take a family relational perspective, not a content perspective, and to look to maintain cultural and family values within the change process of FFT. To do this, it's about matching what we do to the family and matching interventions to both family presentations, the values and norms, how the family structures work, the norms of the culture that they fit in. And our goal is to wrap the model around the family rather than put them in the box of the family. Now, again, what this doesn't mean that we're not going to do engagement motivation first, behavior change second, and generalization third. We're going to continue to do that. But the way in which the goals get addressed, prioritizing the order, the intensity of each, depends on how the family works. So it's in the unique application and translation that makes it match to them. Number 4. We're involved in the child welfare and juvenile justice and mental health systems. And I think as we've moved along in our understanding of these systems and in terms of the struggles that people bring to the table, our clients in those systems, we realize that trauma is a big part of what we're dealing with as change agents in all these different systems. And when I say trauma, what I mean is both the degree of exposure that our families have had to different traumatic events, be they medical, being they behavioral, being they related to violence or changes in the family structure. In addition to exposure, there's also the notion that certain symptoms by individuals though these get amplified in different individuals through the different developmental stages. So we're likely to see trauma emerge in different places in the developmental process, depending on what's going on. But being trauma informed is because it's central to the experiences family have as they come to see us. And some of that trauma, as I said, might be related to old experience. It might be related to their experiences in the system that they're in currently. Being trauma focused means that exposure to these events, it means understanding that this exposure is significant. It not only sets off different behavioral problems, but it's part of the family context that gives meaning to different behavior. Understanding trauma from a relational perspective helps you put it into perspective, helps you find the noble intention of people, and helps you understand the unique and very special ways in which they're struggling. A family relational view on trauma focuses on breaking an ongoing cycle. So if you think a little bit about trauma comes from an experience, but trauma gets maintained within a family system, either by not paying attention to or paying too much attention to different activities of people and missing the trauma focus. Successful when it's done in a purposeful, individualized, integrated, and coordinated way. What I mean by that is down to session by session, you will have a purpose for why you do what you do as you speak with the families that you're working with. It's a big ask in terms of clinicians, but it's an important ask, and it's the ask that families bring to us every single day, which is to be prepared, to be thoughtful, and bring the best that you have to help us every time you see us. What this means is that treatment from our perspective takes place in every interaction you have with the family, not just in a formal session. If you happen to be doing transportation and taking a youth or a caretaker somewhere to get some practical help, those moments in the car are invaluable or priceless, as they would say. The moments in which you come by to check on how they're doing, that is a moment where in 10 minutes you could add a significant amount to the treatment progress that families are making. So regardless of the formality of the setting, remember that it is you and your contact with the family that is therapeutic and what therapy is about. You can make every one of those contacts purposeful if you think about and use the treatment planning tools in FFT. We're trying to provide integrated care in collaboration with community partners to avoid unnecessary duplication or contradictory services. So what that means is be purposeful in not providing something that someone else is, and be purposeful in using what someone else is providing and building upon that. In an ideal world, we'd work with all the key players in interaction that are interacting with the family to provide continuity of care. And what that means is that when big decisions have to be made, make those out with the other service providers. In some cases, it means that you're going to do check-ins and you're going to receive updates and you're going to help with needs and coordinating different treatment teams and different attendants and different activities. You're going to be an advocate for the family, but you're going to be an advocate in promoting the family's ability to do it themselves. So as purposeful as we can with the things that happen inside sessions and outside sessions, that's what we're seeking to do. It has a very clear map that's embedded in it. And that map, as I've said before, is a change process map. It's just a map that says, if you're going to begin a journey of psychological change, begin here. In the middle sections of that journey, these are most helpful things to do. And in the end of that journey, these are the most helpful things to do. It doesn't tell you what to talk about. It doesn't tell you how to talk about it. It just tells you the domain and the place to focus to make change work best. So from that sense, the clinical protocol is an FFT treatment map, and it guides you around through the different most effective steps of change in the correct order so that you can have an idea about what to do when, with what frequency, and what duration. It's really a systematic evidence-based change mechanisms in the model, and they're embedded in this step-by-step change process that is intended to promote individual capacity and family relationships over time. Each of these phases have measurable goals and clinical targets so that the family and you can know where you're going and how to get there. In that way, the FFT model is a family-focused relational pathway of change. It's a little like a winding road, right? It goes up, it goes down and around while it's also going someplace. In FFT, that pathway to change is around 3 different phases. 3 phases in which you're always doing assessment and you're always doing intervention. The phases are meant to indicate in the circles are because in those phases you do go around and around and as you talk through things with families and try to bring them to a better place. The voice of the family should be central to decision making. Now, I've talked about the voice of the family a number of times already in these discussions, but it is essential for us. The difficulty in getting family voice is not the desire to, it's a technology to help bring it to the table. So for us, by using the FFT Care For system, we include the family in every step along the way by asking them after every session the impact we're having, the progress they feel like they're making, and the alliance they have, so that we can adjust and attend our treatment goals to where they stand. As I said, every session, families are asked to complete short measures of impact, alliance, and progress. That information goes into Care For, and it comes back out in what we call a quick look way. As you can see on the right-hand side, really easy to see colors and symbols so that you know what they mean without having to read a lot. This allows you to move quickly through your daily workflow. And what it actually does, and think about the value of this, it brings and includes the voice of every family member in every one of your decisions. This makes you get to your end goal more quickly and more effectively. 7, treatment needs to be relevant, and the outcomes need to be obtainable by the family and family focused in a way that they match to them. Here's what we mean by this. We mean that we can ask families lots of different things to do. And my joke is frequently that we can ask them to be far taller than they are, and that's a difficult ask, to be taller. What I mean is that some things are not obtainable by families within their structure, and we need to make sure that we ask things that are doable. And that doesn't mean we're going to take less, but it means that we have to ask things that are capable, that families have the capability of achieving. So it has to fit into their structures and values and their capabilities. It has to fit into the way they have their family structured and the way cultural binds them to what's important. Remember, our goal is to not only change the problem behavior, but help families in the future be empowered to continue to add things and to continue to solve things. If you can take and help a family with a current problem and then also help them with skills to handle the next problem, that's the most relevant, obtainable, and family-focused thing we can do. And within this, it's important to remember that tiny changes of things can have lasting alterations in how families work because they change parts of behavioral patterns that can have a long-going positive outcome. What is a good outcome then that's an obtainable one? We're looking for a couple of really interesting things by families. First of all, that they keep up what we've done. They don't give it up, but they keep using it. That they can handle more and difficult problems effectively. That they can be consistent in their work and their handling of their children and their caretakers. They can adjust and adapt when things come up. They don't get knocked off their game by small variations. They can address bigger issues as they come up and feel not only empowered, but self-reliant, family-reliant, and community-reliant rather than treatment-reliant. Number 8, evidence-based treatment, treatment planning, and fidelity monitoring promote positive outcomes. What I mean by this is that we're learning that with ongoing real-time information, we can make better decisions, we can make better treatment planning, and we can make sure that we can measure fidelity in a way that promotes outcomes so that the families benefit from all these activities. You know, the last thing you want is to have a treatment fidelity score that comes 6 months after you've done it so that there's nothing you can do to change. It doesn't help the family and it doesn't help you. It doesn't help if you get client feedback a month after it happened or when the case is closed. There's nothing you can do about it. So if we can incorporate evidence through your treatment planning and through what clients tell us into the ongoing everyday workings of FFT, we'll have a great benefit. So to be successful, clinicians really need feedback. You really need information from other sources about how you're doing. And that source can be your consultant, your supervisor, yourself, and your clients in terms of getting a different perspective on what you're doing. And FFT incorporates then very specific measurements and feedback systems to give you that ongoing information about the model impact and the symptoms and the behavior in our web-based tool. And that web-based tool, as you know, combines treatment planning with measures in order to help you match to the client in an evidence-based way. Think of it a little bit like an Apple Watch. You have 3 rings that are intended to distill the complexities of exercise. One is a movement one, one's exercise, and one's standing. the three core concepts of being healthy and having daily exercise. Well, in FFT, we've done the very same thing. We're providing you with evidence of the impact you're having, the progress they feel, and the alliance they have both with you and others, every session by session. And you're able to use those as your three rings to help fit your work closer and closer and closer to what the family, so that the family feels that they're getting what you're intending to provide.
There are two other principles that are unique to FFT behavioral health. First of all, the population we deal with in FFT behavioral health is one in which it's frequent that there have been psychological evaluations, that there have been diagnoses, many times that there's medication, and maybe active psychiatric and psychological care. Typical to the mental health system are diagnoses. What becomes really interesting and what's important is to remember individuals are not their mental health problem or their mental health diagnosis. And what I mean by that is that it's really important to look beyond diagnoses, to look beyond the label, and to look at the person. In many ways in FFT, we talk about this as don't judge a book by its cover. In the sense, don't look at the outside picture, don't look at the outside design, and make a decision about the entire character of the person in the middle. One of the unique features about individuals in the mental health system, particularly those with chronic conditions, is that they can become in part defined by their diagnosis. What this means is assessments and diagnosis can stick, they can label, and in many ways limit an individual. For example, what's helpful to understand about a behavior from a family member is that it's rooted in a mental health issue. That doesn't mean that the person is their diagnosis. In fact, family members need to be able to look beyond a diagnosis and see the person for all the ways in which they're capable and all the ways in which they're successful. For some, involvement in the system, meaning having a diagnosis, can become also part of a core relational pattern. That when you become defined by your mental health problem, you tend to interact frequently with the mental health system, and it becomes part of the way in which you solve the crises and problems that go on every day. In that way, the mental health system becomes part of the relational pattern instead of part of the help. Long-term success means that you help families become capable of navigating and handling a system that they may be in for quite some time. With long-term chronic mental health problems, the family is likely to have, almost for a lifetime, contact with the system. Unfortunately, the system will change around them. Psychiatrists, psychologists, doctors will come and go. Nurses, nurse practitioners will come and go. It's the family that has to be knowledgeable. It's the family that has to be capable of navigating a changing system, learning to know where to go to get what they need, and learning to know where to go to get what fits them. Long-term involvement then means navigating becomes a core central skill. And in part that's important because much like the child welfare system, the mental health system is frequently disparate and disorganized and complex. It can become very difficult to get through it and become very easy to get lost. And success in the long term is in part because families are able to navigate the system, get the help that they need. They can evaluate treatment options and determine what fits them, rather than just take from the system and being moved from one to the other.